Boyfriend 1T commit unless he meets my parents, but they've ruined all my relationships. My 25 female parents have chased away every boyfriend I have ever had. How do I prevent this from ruining my relationship with my current boyfriend, 28 male? I was very shy during high school and didn't leave my house unless I had to. So as a result, I didn't get a boyfriend until my freshman year of college. After 7 months of dating my first ever boyfriend, I brought him to my parents' house for dinner. So they could meet him. I had to step away for roughly 10 minutes to help my older sister with her baby. And when I came back, my boyfriend, then 20, and my dad, old, yep, just old, were having a full-blown fist fight. We managed to stop them and my boyfriend stormed off without saying anything. While my dad insisted, my boyfriend was incredibly rude and disrespectful to him and my mother, and that a guy like that was no good for me because he'd just end up doing the same thing to me. I was shocked that my boyfriend could do such a thing because he had always been extremely sweet and I've never met or heard of anyone not liking him. But when I called him and told him what my dad had said about what happened, all he did was laugh and say, "I can believe whatever I want," before blocking me on everything. I was deeply disturbed by this, but my mom and sister insisted that he had just shown his true colors and said my dad saved me from an abuser. I reluctantly accepted this, but something about it felt really off. I met my second boyfriend several months later during my sophomore year. Part of me still felt my parents were part of the problem with my last boyfriend, so I managed to get him to wait an entire year before introducing him to my parents. From the moment she laid eyes on him, every word my mom spoke to him was dripping with fake friendliness and subtle jabs implying she did not approve of him, which made him visibly uncomfortable. While we were eating dinner, she began asking me what made me decide to date my boyfriend and asked about other guys and why they didn't work out. Some of the guys she asked about were completely made up. At this point, it was clear what they were trying to do, and I silently vowed to talk to my boyfriend and tell him how my parents were trying to sabotage me. Unfortunately, it didn't get that far as my dad chipped in and demanded to know how a boy who couldn't support himself financially was ever going to support his daughter. Mind you, we were both juniors in college at this point, and both of us were working part-time jobs, so this question was really insane. My boyfriend responded by saying he'd already decided he wanted nothing to do with his family and was planning to break up with me when he got home, but he's just going to leave now. Within minutes, he was gone and I was blocked again. My parents insisted they did nothing wrong and just wanted to test his confidence as any parents would, but I pointed out that this was the second boyfriend they chased away and they didn't do anything to scare off my older sister's husband. I went low contact with them after that, but fast forwarding a little bit, I eventually allowed them to gaslight me into introducing them to my third boyfriend whom I had met towards the end of my senior year, and basically the same thing happened. I had made it through college unable to find a long-term boyfriend purely because of my parents. I did meet my current boyfriend, 28 male, 2 years ago, and I have managed to avoid introducing him to my family thus far. If he ever brought it up, I would always have a ready-made excuse prepared to explain why it wasn't possible, which has been pretty easy because he usually only asks about them when planning for major holidays. I have fallen madly in love with him and hope to start a family with him one day, but he recently told me that he can't even allow me to move in with him until he's had a chance to meet my family. I do not know what to do as I know my parents will make it their mission to break us up if they meet him. However, based on his insistence on meeting them, I realize I can't put this off any longer. Usually, relationships end because of something one person in the relationship says or does. And it's incredibly unfair that I always end up single because of things I cannot control. I want to tell my boyfriend about my parents and insist that meeting them is a bad idea, but I've listened in on some of his conversations with his friends and the general consensus among them seems to be that a girl with a super dysfunctional family is a massive red flag and an indicator of what their married life would be like. So I come here asking, how do I approach the problem that is my parents without risking losing the longest relationship I've ever had? If my parents end up being the cause of yet another breakup, I just don't know what I'll do. I just don't know. Opie, you're not the problem. Your parents clearly are. They're not protective. They're controlling and have sabotaged your past relationships. And of course, that's something to worry about. But if your boyfriend is serious about you, he'll understand as long as you're honest and upfront. So if I were you, before introducing him to my parents, I would tell him everything that you've shared with us in the post, every single bit of how they chased everybody away. This isn't about you being a red flag. It's about how you've tried to navigate this toxic family dynamic, but it's important to show him that you're worried about this. So maybe this time, you could shake things up a little bit. Instead of taking your boyfriend to their home, try meeting them in a neutral place, like maybe going out for coffee, and that's how you will introduce your boyfriend to them. If they're against it, then you just can't go. And of course, keep your boyfriend in the loop. And if you do get to meet them, if anything should go a little bit sideways, you go no contact. Your parents sound like they're the type of people you do want to keep away. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section, and now let's check out the community comments. Fortnite Witch says, you stop bringing anyone you like around them. Period. Tell your boyfriend why. They get weird and run anyone you date off with their nonsense and you'd rather just avoid them altogether. Shrug. My boyfriend knows all about my dysfunctional family and abusive upbringing. It didn't run him off. If anything, it brought us closer together as he empathized. Charles Incarnate says, if your plan is to stay with him in the long run, you have two options. 1. Come clean about why you don't want them to meet and explain exactly why you're scared of them meeting, or 2. Cut off your parents entirely and tell your boyfriend you cut them off. Ideally, either way, you end up telling him why you chose what you chose. Good relationships take communication, and if your boyfriend doesn't know why he's being kept away from your family, that most likely will be the reason you break up. And Ocean Spice says, I'm going to be honest here. Yes, they are the problem, but you're also part of the problem. You immediately took your parents' side after the first meeting with a boyfriend of yours turned into a literal fight and confronted him about it as if he was the problem. And even after a clear pattern was starting to emerge, you still did exactly what they wanted and took your third boyfriend right over to be their next victim. Why? Why do they even need to know the details of your relationships? You already know that when you tell them you're seeing someone, they're just going to do everything they can to antagonize this person and break you up. I truly don't understand why you're letting them. Edit. Wow. I made this post about an hour before going to bed, but woke up to quite a few comments here. Thank you so much to everyone who has helped me realize what I need to do. I've read through all of the comments and saw some recurring questions come up that I wanted to address. I am not fully no contact with my parents primarily because they helped me a lot financially during college. And when I first graduated and was looking for a job, when I went low contact with them, they constantly yelled at me for being ungrateful and said family does not turn on each other over minor disagreement involving boys. It sounds ridiculous when I type it here, but after months of this treatment, when I found myself faced with the decision to either tell them I forgive them so they'll pay for my dorm room or refuse to forgive them and have to move back home, I ended up caving. Why didn't I stand up for my past boyfriends when I saw them being verbally abused? I don't know. I've never been allowed to talk back to my parents, so the thought of calling them out while we have company over is not something I realized I could do, I guess. My arguments with them after they ran off boyfriends 2 and 3 were the only times I've ever come into full conflict with them in my entire life. I will be going to my boyfriend's house today after work and will tell him everything. I am terrified he will still want to meet them. Just thinking about it has me shaking at my desk, but you're all right. He has a right to know and make his own decision. Edit 2. I told him and even showed him the post. To make a long story short, he still would like to meet them but thanked me for telling him as he always figured something was seriously wrong. My parents host dinner for our family every Sunday, and we will be attending this one. Alright, well, I think the community came through for OP. As she stated in her edit, she told everything to her boyfriend, and they're still gonna meet the parents. So let's move on to the update to see how the story ends. I meant to make this update a lot sooner, but since my last post, a lot has happened. I truly appreciate all the comments I received calling me out for hiding my parents being insane from my boyfriend and encouraging me to be honest with him. My boyfriend is pretty involved now, so I guess I should give him a fake name. I will call him Ethan. I sat Ethan down and told him about my parents and how they ran off my previous boyfriends before showing him my original post as many recommended. Fortunately, he did not seem to care that I hadn't told him, but he did agree with many commenters that my parents were more than just insane. They were outright abusive. Although he understood how I felt, he still said he would like to meet them. He said he wanted to see it for himself, but also because he felt there was an underlying reason for their behavior. As I mentioned, my parents have dinner for the family every Sunday, which I have been attending on the weeks that I'm not hanging out with Ethan that day. So we agreed that he would come to the next one. When Sunday came and we arrived at my parents' house, my anxiety was through the roof. Ethan had agreed to leave with me the moment things started to get out of hand. But with my parents, that could have easily been as soon as we walked through the front door. My parents were surprisingly very nice though. My dad actually seemed excited to see Ethan and my mother fawned over her daughter bringing home such a handsome, confident-looking man. I couldn't understand what was happening. Ethan even shot me a look a couple of times as if to silently ask if he was missing something because my parents were actually lovely. I want to provide a play-by-play of the entire night, but the post would just be too long. The point is my parents had done a complete 180 from their previous behavior, and it made me look and feel crazy for trying to warn Ethan about them ahead of time. During dinner, my mom said she was so happy to see her daughter had finally found someone who wasn't judgmental and was willing to give me a chance because of the person I am today because the past doesn't matter. My heart dropped. What was she talking about? Ethan said he does not know about anything in my past that may be cause of concern, and my parents exchanged a concerned look as if it was rehearsed. My dad asked him why he thinks my previous relationships failed, and he said that he was under the impression they got scared away after meeting my parents. My mother looked at me with disappointment on her face and said, "OP, is that really what you told him?" I was at a loss for words, but Ethan was not. He said that it's pretty clear they are trying to plant seeds of doubt in him about our relationship, but he is not interested as he knows me well enough to know my character. And that even if there was something serious in my past, parents who loved and supported me or even just wanted grandchildren would keep it a secret to avoid ruining my relationship. My dad said he already has 2 grandchildren and motioned toward my sister who did not have her kids with her that evening. Ethan said my dad must have been very supportive of my sister for her to be able to start a family while he tries to run off any guy I bring home. And my dad's response was very casual, but extremely shocking. He said, "Of course, she's actually mine." Everyone was quiet for a few moments until Ethan spoke up and said that now all of the abuse they've only put me through is starting to make sense. My mom said he's spouting nonsense and that I have not been abused in any way. She then looked at me and admitted her marriage had a rocky start, but both her and my father have moved past that. I was too busy replaying my entire life in my head to say anything. The previous boyfriends, the lack of support for my social outings growing up, the volleyball games I had to have a friend drive me to because my parents were always too busy. The rage I was always at risk of phasing if I ever spoke my mind, all while my sister got the opposite. I started to cry the hardest I ever have. Ethan immediately announced that we are leaving. My dad demanded we stay where we are so we can clear things out, but Ethan ignored him as he pulled me out of my chair and led me away. My mom screamed at me not to leave and that this guy was trying to isolate me from my family. I yelled back that if anyone had been trying to isolate me, it was her for my whole life. As we drove back to Ethan's place, my mom sent me several text messages cussing me out saying one mistake doesn't change the fact that my dad loved, supported, and raised me and that he would always be my real father. Ethan said, "He's not my dad. He's an abusive, controlling a-hole who is taking his insecurities out on me." I ended up blocking both of my parents' numbers because they were saying some truly awful things to me, both about myself and Ethan. Ethan said he was expecting them to be crazy, but this was far worse than he could have anticipated. He said I need to go into therapy immediately and that he will pay for anything my insurance doesn't cover. My parents showed up at my apartment twice yesterday to demand I come out and speak to them, but I've been staying at Ethan's all weekend and will likely be here all week. I'm not sure if this is the update y'all wanted. I had countless people enraged at me for being spineless and not standing up to my parents, and while I had planned on doing so, that's not what happened. I don't know what's going to happen with my parents or where I go from here, but now that the holiday is over, I can spend some time looking for a good therapist. Obi, first of all, Ethan sounds awesome. He's definitely got your back. And to me, the path forward is absolutely block your parents, document everything, and if they keep harassing you, go to the police and file for a restraining order. From what you tell us, you're your mother's affair child and your dad took it out on you for your whole life while she enabled it and actually took part in it. They are both scum. So here's wishing you and Ethan all the best in the future, OB, and hopefully, you can find a good therapist to help you out. Take care and thanks for sharing. And now let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance and it's by user, Axelian. Don't want me to touch your PS5? Well, alright, I bought a PlayStation 5 for my cousin back in my home country last year. I live in the Middle East and whenever I visit my family in my home country, I often go with gifts. I recently started on my first somewhat well-paying job and decided to get something nice for the family home. I got my little cousin a PS5. My cousin is 16. We had been playing on my account due to the lack of games in his. We hadn't had time to go and buy any that he liked yet. His mom wouldn't let him go and buy any for himself till after the week of his exams, which were a couple of weeks after I had to return to the Middle East. The trip was nice. My cousin was very happy with the gift. We spent a few hours at night playing against each other on FIFA. Now this one time, my cousin was at school and I decided I'd hop on one of my games and finish the story. The game I was playing was God of War Ragnarok. Apparently, it was one of the games he wanted to play. Now the issue was he saw me playing that game on his PS5 when he returned home from school and went apecrap. His words were, "Don't touch my PS5. He meant when he's not around because he wants to play the games himself and not get the saves messed up or something, but he didn't mention that at first. I told him this was my account. The saves are already on the cloud and connected to mine. He can get a fresh start on his account later. It's not a big deal." He said he didn't care and repeated that he didn't want me to touch his PS5 when he was at school. I tried to explain once again, and he screamed at me that if that's all it is, then get your precious account of my PS5. At this point, I was done with this tantrum anyway. Cue malicious compliance. I deleted my account from his PS5 and told him I won't touch it anymore. He was smug about me taking the L then. But later that night, when he got around to try and play the games, well, All my games were now locked out on his account. He tried to access my account, but, well, that's no longer on it. He doesn't know the password, and I have two-factor authentication anyway. He even went on the store to check the price of the game he wanted to play, but, well, what money was he going to use to buy them? Finally, he came up to me and nonchalantly asked me if I want to play FIFA together again. I smirked internally and responded that I won't touch his PS5. He can play on his own. He tried to convince me that it'd be fun and said that he can beat me in a few matches and all that. I said the same thing. I am not touching that PS5 again. He realized finally that he'd be effectively locked out of playing anything except Astro's Playroom for the next couple of weeks if I don't get my account on it again. His mom knew what had happened and had asked me to not put my account on it again. He needed to focus on his upcoming exams, so I didn't. No matter how much he begged me, I let him stew with no games with the PS5 teasing all the while. I enjoyed the rest of my vacation with the rest of my family. Opus said it. Damn, this post blew up. This happened sometime August of last year. My cousin did apologize, albeit a few days after I had left the country. That may have been his mom taking him to the task about the entire thing, but he did seriously apologize for it, and I could tell he meant it. I didn't take it any further than this because, well, he's just a kid. I let his mom handle everything after my bit of malicious compliance. Willow P., he was so adamant about you not touching his PS5. That's what he gets, isn't it?